How do we form impressions of others? The third step of social perception is integration. We combine all the information we've collected about a target and form an impression of them. Social psychologists disagree about precisely how to do this. The summation model says we add up all the target's traits. The more positive the total, the better the impression. The averaging model says we average the value of all the target's traits. The higher the average, the better the impression. An even more complex theory of impression formation suggests it's influenced by two bits of information: the perceiver's characteristics and a weighted average of the target's traits. Let's explore information integration theory in more detail on the next few slides. First, we'll consider the perceiver's characteristics. Each of us differs in terms of the kinds of impressions we form of others. For instance, some of us tend to judge others' intellectual ability and job success. Others judge physical appearance and fitness. Still, others judge people's sense of humor. And we tend to use ourselves as the frame of reference. If we care about sports, we judge others by their athletic ability. If we are tall, we judge others by their height as well. The impressions we form is also determined by our mood. When we are in a positive mood, we tend to be less critical of others. Finally, our physical position, orientation, sensations, and movements can also influence the way we view other people. Researchers refer to this as embodiment effects, the effects our body has on our mind. In the early 2000s, Williams and Barg asked participants to describe a target's behavior. One group held iced coffee in their hands, and a second group held hot coffee. The people who held the hot coffee were more likely to describe the target as warm, generous, and caring than the people who held the iced coffee. Other research suggests that slouching at our desk can make us feel worse, both physically and emotionally, than sitting up straight with both feet flat on the ground. As you would expect, the target's characteristics impact how we form an impression of them. The more observable, significant, and important the target's traits, the more impactful they will be. Note, too, that the value of a trait varies across domains and situations. The traits that are important to our work are not necessarily the same traits that make us a good friend, partner, or parent. We are also prone to the trait negativity bias, where we give more weight to the target's negative traits than positive ones. In general, we are more influenced by information that is presented early in a sequence than information presented later. This is called the primacy effect. Researchers who study this effect often present participants with lists of traits, and then measure their impressions of a target's behavior. The figure here on the slide illustrates the results of many of these studies. In one condition, participants heard a list that began with positive traits. In another condition, the list began with negative ones. The participants who read positive words first formed a more positive impression of the target than those who read negative words first. The priming effect occurs when recently used information influences or primes how we interpret additional information. For example, imagine you've been set up on a blind date, and the only detail you have is that the person is recently divorced. This detail serves as a primer because it sets you up to think in a certain way. By the time you finally go on the date, you've probably already made some assumptions about the person, and during the date, you'll interpret their behavior in ways that align with what you've already been told about them. Another example is depicted in the graph. Researchers primed their participants with words and then measured their behaviors. The participants primed with rude words were more likely to interrupt others than the participants who were primed with polite words. In the last part of the lecture, you will learn about the confirmation biases that help us verify or confirm our impressions of others.